Shalom Aleichem, fellow Talmidei Rabbi Akiva. We are gathered together to learn a Maamer that is going to be Le'iloi Nishmas, our dear Rosh Hashiva, Rav Chosid, Rav Goyin, Rav Tomim, Rav Michal, Akiva Gershon, Rafal, Mנחem, נחum, that during the Shiva, a group of the Talmidei Rabbi Akiva got together and created this wonderful initiative that everyone that can should go through the Maamorim of Sefer Maamorim and look at Chelek Vav, and that every week there will be different Magidei Shiurim giving Shiurim in the Maamer, an overview of the Maamer, some understanding of the background and the depth of the Maamer. And it's Kemuvan Begam Pashut, it's self-understood that such a initiative, which learning Maamorim, and especially Be'iyun, and more important, that Daita de Navshei, was one of the trademarks of our dear Rosh Hashiva. And therefore, to me personally, it's a tremendous chus to be able to be mishtatev, v'ani amaschil, to begin this tremendous initiative. We are going to beginning with the first Maamer, the Maamer which was given out for Rosh Hashanah Tovshin Nun Beis. We all know, just some basic background, that the Rebbe and Maamorim and his yachas to his Maamorim was very different than the previous Rabbeim. Most of our previous Rabbeim, they themselves would write down their own Maamorim, and there would be choizrim that would go into the Rabbeim, and they would chazer, and the Rabbeim would correct them on the Maamorim that they reviewed. Our Rebbe, for the earlier years, basically said the Maamorim. The Rebbe did not write his Maamorim, and in most instances, the Rebbe was not Magia, did not edit his Maamorim. However, in the later years, especially after the Istalkus of the Rebbetzin, the Rebbe stopped saying Maamorim, and instead, the Rebbe agreed to be Magia, to edit his Maamorim, and in honor of the Yomim Tovim, whether they are biblical Yomim Tovim, real Yomim Tovim, Sukkot and Pastoira, Chanukah, Purim, Pesach, Shavuos, etc., or whether they are Chassidish Yom the Pagra, the Rebbe agreed to be Magia, a Maamer, and for Chassidim, that was the life of the Yom Tiv. That was the chayis of the Yom Tiv, the new Maamer, that the Rebbe was Magia. And that's why Sefer Maamorim Malukit Chelek Aleph is pretty much the Maamorim from Tavshin Yud Aleph for the first almost 35 years or so of the Rebbe's Nasius. And then starting from Malukit Beis and on, so you have Memches, Memtes, Nun Aleph, those are the first five. And Sefer Maamorim Malukit Chelek Vav are the Maamorim that the Rebbe was Magia for the half a year that the Rebbe was Magia Maamorim in Tavshin Nun Beis. Now, this Maamer, when it came out by the Chassidim, was the Chassidim very much had a koch in this Maamer. And what was the reason? Because in the summer of Tavshin Nun Aleph, the Rebbe had started the worldwide campaign to learn about Moshiach. And the Rebbe said that that's the derech yeshara, hakala v'amehira, the direct path to bring Moshiach is by learning about Moshiach. And the Rebbe added something extremely personal, and which was a big chidush for those that were involved with preparing the sichos. And the Rebbe said that if you want to learn about Moshiach, especially the Maamorim and the Likutei Sichos of Nesidoi Reimi, if you want to understand what Moshiach is, you have to hear it miteirosei shel Moshiach, which means the Maamorim and the Likutei Sichos of the Rebbe. So therefore, this Maamer, which is based on a pasuk in Yeshaya, Perek Chav Zayin, pasuk Yud Gimel, which speaks about a very, very important and famous nevuah that's going to take place in the time of Mashiach, Vehaya Bayom Hahu, Yitקע בשופר גדול, one of the most famous prophecies, that in the times of Mashiach, a great shofar will sound, and all those which were lost in these distant countries, Ashur, Syria, and Mitzrayim, they're all going to return and bow down to the Eibishter, Bahar HaKodesh, B'Yerushalayim. And this is a Maamer which is going to explain to us what is the power of the shofar Gdol of Moshiach. So this was a tremendous and very helpful and a very, very important Maamer that Chassidim started koching sich in, because it was a Maamer that was Mamish Gula Moshiach Maamer. Now, some background to the actual Maamer itself. The Maamer was said Rosh Hashanah Tovshin Chavches, which was the first Rosh Hashanah right after the 6-Day War. And for those of you which may be unfamiliar, it's important to go back and give us some history. And that is that in the 60s, especially the middle 60s, the early 70s, there was a tremendous spiritual awakening by the youth of America. A little bit to understand. World War II finished in 1945. When World War II finished, a generation started growing up that cared very much about Gashmis. Those were the immigrants that came to America after the war. They wanted a better Gashmistic life for their children. Or they were people that were born after the war and they were rebuilding. In the late 40s and the 50s and the early 60s, there was a tremendous koch in having a lot of money, fancy homes, building up your Gashmistic life. The children that were born at that time, that they were becoming teenagers in the 60s and early 70s, they felt spiritually undernourished. They didn't feel that they got the necessary, deep purpose of meaning in life. They knew that life can't just be following the dollar. They knew there had to be something more. And they started seeking and searching for spirituality. But being that they were misguided, so therefore many of them ended up taking drugs, hippie movement, long hair, and acting in a very pritustic way, but joining cults. But this was really an expression of a deep desire and yearning for spirituality, for Ruchnius. Our Rebbe saw and understood this desire, and that's when the shluchim to campuses started, the Balei Tshuva yeshivas. Many of us that are watching this shiur are descendants of these hippies that were niskarev to Yiddishkeit. They were able to take their desire for spirituality and translate it into Maisa HaMitzvahs. I once heard very late at night by a Fabrengen, by Rav Shalom Charatonov. Rabbi Charatonov was saying, someone said how the Rebbe used out this spiritual awakening to bring these young hippies to tshuva. Rav Shalom Charatonov corrected him and he said the Rebbe didn't use out the spiritual awakening. To a certain extent, the Rebbe created the spiritual awakening. Everyone was shocked. What do you mean by that? He says he has a feeling that after Rebbe Tzimchana passed away, the Rebbe started giving shiurim on Igeres HaTshuva. He said by the Rebbe teaching week after week Igeres HaTshuva, the Rebbe was bringing a ruach of tshuva into the world. And the Rebbe was creating this spiritual desire and the spiritual yearning, the awakening in the neshames of the youth and the Yiddishkeit and the Yidden in America. And this was nispashet to the entire America, the desire for ruchnias, the desire for spirituality. Either way, the desire for spirituality by many did not necessarily connect with being proud Yidden. But then an event happened that changed that. And that was the 6-Day War. The 6-Day War, where the entire world watched that the Arab nations try to annihilate, bring a second Holocaust to Klal Yisrael, Chas v'Sholem, Hoya Leisiyah. And the Eibishter bin Nisei Nisim can explain it. In 6 days, Eretz Yisrael was able to be victorious, doubled in size. Koisel biyadenu, we have the Koisel Maravi. The Gaon Yaakov, and the oiros for being a proud yid that came from that milchama and that kufa is ein l'shayr. People turned over their entire hashkafa. And you hear that side the Yidden in Eretz Yisrael, side the Yidden in Russia that heard about it. A new spirit of Gaon Yaakov was brought into the world. And this spirit was translated by many to lead to Pashet Chayi HaTorah VaMitzvah. Hello? I totally forgot about it. Right. Well, yeah, okay. But Ashkana, I was giving a share on the wagon. Where is it in the hammer? Yeah. The Gaon Yaakov that it created was Pashet, a life-changing event. And while everyone was trying to understand what this was, what was going on over here, the Rebbe was very clear that this is part of the Shofar Gdol. This is a inyan connected to the Great Awakening. Most people think that Shofar Gdol means a great sound will blow. It's going to be a tremendous sound. It's not a sound, it's an awakening. But when we think of awakening, we think you get awakened by a sound. But the Shofar Gdol means an isoirus mipnimius alevi. And the Rebbe said this Maamer on the Rosh Hashanah following the great victory of the 6-Day War, explaining what was going on. What is the Shofar Gdol of Moshiach? And that is really the essence of what this Maamer is all about. The Maamer, like all the Maamorim, starts off with a few questions. And these questions are like the keys by which the Rebbe will then enter the essence of what the Shofar Gdol of Moshiach is. Like Chassidim said, this is the passport to the Maamer. And the Rebbe Maamer Vehaya Bayom Hahu is based on Maamorim that the Alter Rebbe said, Biurim of the Tzemach Tzedek, Shilas of the Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe, and other Biurim of Rabbi Seinu Nisienu, which Bechlal on Rosh Hashanah, the Rebbe would always quote an Nekuda from all the Rabbeim, because Rosh Hashanah is Binyan HaMalchus, and you need all the Sfiros in order to create this Binyan HaMalchus. The same was always Yud Shvat. The Maamorim of Basi Legani also have always the Torah of Or Rabbi Seinu Nisienu, because it's a new inyan of Nesios, which is Binyan HaMalchus. Der Ashvi is Sfiras HaMalchus. And in this Maamer, the Rebbe connects the whole essence of the Maamer to 3 questions. And the first question is a question that when you learn Chassidus, you understand and appreciate more. And that is, why does the Pasuk use the term Shofar Gdol? In other words, if you don't learn Chassidus, or if you're somebody that just reads the Nevi'im, the question is not so strong because the Navi is being dramatic. And there will be on that day a Shofar Gdol, a big shofar will sound and everyone will wake up. You know, it's okay to think that the Navi is just adding that word to create that feeling and that drama and that excitement. But when you learn Chassidus and you realize that mamish everything in Torah is b'diyu and meduyok. So if the Torah uses and the Navi tells us that it's going to be a Shofar Gdol, so there's something to take from that. There is a lesson here. There is a nekuda that the Navi is telling you that this is not just a shofar, It's a shofar Gdol. It's a big shofar. Shiloh number 2. It says, Vehaya Bayom Hahu, of that day, Yitקע, he will blow. Who is he? Not the song, who is he and he is she. But who is he? Who's the one that's going to blow? Why doesn't it use one of the Eibishter's names? On that day, the Eibishter will blow. And we find that by other psukim. Why, when it comes to the shofar Gdol of Moshiach, it's anonymous. There's no name that's given of the Eibishter that's going to blow the shofar. We know we're talking about Hashem, but it doesn't say. It just says he will blow. And thirdly, is Yitקע sounds like, if you translate it literally, that it will blow on its own. Not, he will blow. But Yitקע, it's almost mi'atzmai, that it will be blown. So, what do you mean? The shofar will just happen? What's the diuk in the fact that it's, so to speak, blown on its own? Not only don't we know who's the one that's blowing it, but we're saying that the shofar is going to be blown on its own. And in the first half of the Maamer, the Rebbe wants to explain to us what shofar Gdol is by first explaining to us what shofar is. Everything is understood relative to the thing it's compared to. When you say this child is big, and you see a little kid, he's big compared to a baby. When you see the smaller thing and you say this thing is bigger than that, so you know relatively how big the person is. But if you see something that is truly great, and then you say that is just regular, that's standard, and what I'm talking about is even greater than that, wow, you have a new appreciation for what you are about to experience. If the Rebbe will build up what shofar is, and the Rebbe truly does that in this Maamer, by explaining to us at great length what is the darga of shofar, and those are the highest inyanim that we are familiar with in the time of Golus, and yet all these high inyanim that we are going to explain are just shofar. Now you could begin to appreciate and begin to imagine the greatness of the shofar Gdol, the great shofar that's going to be in the times of Mashiach. So, what is the shofar? What is the shofar Gdol? And why the need of a shofar Gdol? So let's start with the need, and that's what the Rebbe starts with, the Nekudas Habiur, the beginning of the Maamer. And we all understand that the further someone is away from you and you want to reach them, the louder the initial sound has to be. Because sound travels, so if it's a little sound, only somebody that's close can listen. If in its source it's a very loud sound, it may be difficult for the person nearby to listen. My in-laws live on 651 Montgomery Street. For those of you which are familiar with the addresses in Crown Heights, that's literally right next door to the Shabbos alarm in Crown Heights. No one in the family likes to be outside when that Shabbos alarm goes off. You push it, have to go like this. It's so loud. If you're standing there on the corner, it's so loud. Why is it so loud? Because it has to reach so far. It's not loud for those which live on Montgomery and Kingston. It's loud for those that live blocks and blocks away. So being that we are talking about that in the time of Mashiach, Oivdim and Idochim, Beretz Ashur, Beretz Mitzrayim, people which are so far, people, when we say so far, we obviously are not just talking about geographically far from Eretz Yisrael. They say the two people which are furthest from each other are people standing right next to each other with their backs to each other. Those people are the furthest away from each other because they have the entire world in between them. So we are talking about Oivdim and Idochim, people that may not even know that they're Yidden, people that generations, Yiddishkeit, Judaism means nothing to them. And they've been Beretz Asher Mitzrayim, which we're going to explain means involved in Tanugi Olam Hazeh. And they've become dulled to the sensitivity, to the sound. They can't even hear it anymore. The regular shofar doesn't reach them. The regular inyanim doesn't talk to them. talking about Rabbi Wagner. There's many people that can fabrein. We've all sat by other people's fabreingans. Those fabreingans can reach those which are interested. Rabbi Wagner was able to reach those which were far away from being interested. He schlepped them in. His fabreingans were a shofar gadol, the stories, the interest, the way he spoke, and the excitement and the charisma. It's hereingeschleppt Menschen, people which were very far, they couldn't help themselves but be attracted. And the shofar gadol of Mashiach is going to be so intense and so immense that it's able to bring in even those which are so far. Those that don't even know to answer the call of the shofar will be schlepped in by the shofar gadol of Mashiach. And that's why we need a shofar gadol. But to appreciate what that shofar gadol is, the Rebbe builds up, like I mentioned previously, what is the shofar? What is the shofar, regular shofar? Which when you understand the greatness of the regular shofar, you will definitely be able to understand and appreciate the shofar gadol of Mashiach. So in the end of Ois Aleph, Ois Yois Beis, and Gimel, the Rebbe brings 3 times in the Torah where we discuss what shofar is. And then proving to us that those great things are just regular shofar, it must be even higher. So let's see. What bichlal is the shofar? When you think of shofar, the Rambam says that even though it's gzeres hakasuv, remez yesh boi uru yeshenim mishinaschem, waking up. Now the shofar we know is a very, very pashita. It's a very straight, simple sound. There's no melodious tunes because the shofar represents the tzayka mipnimius alev. The Rebbe Marash says that Mishrayt Abba Abba, Mishrayt Tate Tate, or like the mashal, the Baal Shem Tov, that the child, that he lost his language, he went far away from the Melech, the prince, and all he came back is he's not dressed like a prince, he doesn't look like a prince, but Shrai Tate, and the king hears the sound, and that sound connects him again to his son. So, based on how we scream out is the way the Eibishter responds. When the Eibishter responds on a shofar, so that means when the Eibishter's name is there, a name is already a certain level that is a certain hagdara. This person, a name is a box. This is the person's characteristics. This is the person's description. Higher than name represents the depth, the deepest part of the person. You can't even put it into any box, any description, any limitation. That's the essence of the person, the yichida, the essence. And the shofar gadol doesn't have any name because that is the giloy of the Eibishter that's not limited even to high level of soivev kol almin. That's the highest thing. That's why we find that on a regular, when the Torah tells us about the regular shofar being blown, it says, Yitկע, that the Eibishter will blow by a regular shofar. That is a level that there's a level of elikus, which is already mugder. So when it is nisgala, it reaches very far, but only shofar. Shofar gadol, there's no name because it's the essence of the Eibishter being revealed. What is that shofar gadol? So let's start by understanding, like I mentioned, where do we find the regular shofar? Shofar, we know, is on Rosh Hashanah we blow shofar. Now there's a famous din by Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah shecholi is b'Shabbos, b'migdash hayutoikin v'loy b'Medina. On Rosh Hashanah we would blow only in the Beis Hamikdash, but not outside. And today is Managolos, we do not blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. And the reason is we have the Gzeira de Rabba, Shema Yavirenu, which now is not going to get into the pilpul, sort of very geschmacked pilpul from Rabbi Wagner, and the Gzeira of Shema Yavirenu. But the fact is we don't blow the shofar. And we all know that there's the famous question, how could it be that we are mevata, the entire mitzvahs essay deiraisa and all the hamshachas that come with it, because of a gzeira? Like, what's going on? Why? How does this work? And Chassidus always answers that the idea of shofar is a tainug, the begala the Eibishter's tainug in the Brias Ha'olam, the Binyan HaMalchus, and bechlalos that gets accomplished on Shabbos. So being that the Hamshacha is happening anyways, we don't need to do it on Shabbos, just because I'm in the Toronto mode. Remember, like yesterday when I was in She'alav Zal, the Menal Gashmi, the administration of the yeshiva, he wasn't the Lubavitcher. I don't want to say his name. He had an apartment near yeshiva, and he was a Talmud of Rabbi Leo Dessler. We went to his house, and he said that he doesn't understand the Sifrei Chassidus. He said there's a whole Sefer Morim Tafrei Samach Bo, which is this thick, coming to answer why we don't blow shofar on Shabbos. It takes 500 pages to answer the question. Other Svarim, they answer it in 2 pages. Nishvashtan, that's missed the whole point. We're not here to answer a question. We're here to give you Hemshech Samach Bo. I just remember, like, how could you totally miss the boat? But the idea is that there is a tainug there, it's Nimshach on Shabbos. Oy bazoi, so why in the Beis HaMikdash would we blow shofar if it's already happening without our avodah, the tainug? So the Rabbeim explain that there are different levels in tainug itself, obviously. You know, we know ourselves, there's certain things that we enjoy, and there's deeper and deeper and deeper. Go explain to someone the tainug that a father has with a child. There's tainug. And then there's tainug in what we do, and tainug in other things. So there's chitzonius tainug, there's pnimius tainug. And the tainug in the Beis HaMikdash was a much deeper tainug. And therefore, even though b'chutz la'aretz they would not blow shofar, in the Beis HaMikdash we would blow shofar. In the Beis HaMikdash itself, the highlight of shofar was the shofar of Yovel, Teshuvu Ishlach Hudasai. It was a tremendous gilui, the gilui of shofar, to the extent that the entire year is called Shnas HaYovel because of the shofar, which, by the way, I also had a long talk with Rabbi Wagner about this, but that was the mocker that the Rebbe brings for Shnas Hakel. The one pool of Hakel on Sukkot is Nimshach an entire year, just like Yovel, the Kia, was Nimshach, the whole year is called Shnas HaYovel. This is one of the rayas the Rebbe brings to this revolutionary concept of Shnas Hakel. But either way, even this great tainug, even this great darga of Yovel, which is the deepest tainug of the Eibishter, is only regular shofar. It's only called Vavarta Shofar Trua. So can you imagine what Shofar Gdol is? Shofar Gdol is even higher than the Shofar of Yovel. And now Ois Gimel, the Rebbe goes the next step. And again, I'm giving you an overview with the hope that everyone's going to be able to learn the Maamer inside and be able to appreciate it themselves. Just trying to give an overview and a deeper understanding, and broader context of what the Rebbe is saying. Even more than that, one of the greatest sounds that we have heard from the shofar, we always think about when we think about Matan Torah, which Matan Torah will not be twice. Matan Torah is the time when there was Gilui of the Eibishter in the world, Vayeded Hashem al Har Sinai, and he was able to say, Anoichi Hashem lekecha. The pasuk says, Vahi koil ha-shofar hoilech v'chosek miyoid, that the koil ha-shofar was blasting and it was big. In other words, it was a regular sound of shofar, but it was very, very loud, and it was nimshach to the entire world, to the extent that we know that Sipur Le'Parah, everyone was quiet. It means there was a gilui that the whole world felt. Yet, we know, and it's brought down from Pirkei de Rebbe Lezer, that there were 2 horns on the aisle of Avram Avinu that he found by the Akedas Yitzchak. And the left horn was the shofar of Matan Torah, and the right horn was the shofar of Moshiach. In other words, that the shofar of Moshiach is even higher than the shofar of Matan Torah. Now, Matan Torah, so great. Like Chazal say, Matan Torah, there's not going to be an Oida Pam Matan Torah. There's not going to be another time Matan Torah. And yet, even by Matan Torah, this great Gilui, which started the whole process of Dira B'Tachtoinim, Vayeda Davayal HaSinai, Vania Maschil. It was only Shofar. Why? Because at the end of the day, by Matan Torah, all the Yidden, we don't just mean that they were geographically close. There was a certain Hisoiros, they just came from Yitzias Mitzrayim, they came to Kriyas Yamsu. There was a certain Hisalos of Kedusha. There was a certain elevation, there was a certain spiritual connection. So just to bring them to the next level, bring the world at that time to the next level, you did not need to have a shofar gadol. Shofar was enough. The time of Mashiach, to reach the oivdim and idachim, to reach those people which were so far away, that they're so spiritually, pathetic. They're not even against, they're just apathetic. They have no interest, they don't know knowledge and no desire. That comes from the Eibishter himself, without any yisoirus. They didn't even, because they're not doing an avoida to wake it up, because they're not doing anything. And the Eibishter is going to be megala the etzem. You can imagine when that etzem is nesgala, the yechida, there's a certain part inside of us, which is the pintle yid, the yechida shebenefesh. Think of it like a little radar that's quiet, but when the sound goes off, it connects every single yid. It's going to be turned on. Now, this is all till Ois Dalet in the Maamer. In Ois Dalet, and we're going to finish with this Ois, the Rebbe is going to stel sich in a very, very important question. And that is that seemingly, and when I say the question, we're going to build it up based on what the Rebbe says. Seemingly, a giloi that comes without avoida is the heipich of what the whole Dira B'Tachtoinim is all about. The Eibishter wants avoid. L'maisi yedecha tichsoi. So why the gili of Mashiach is coming on its own without avoida? Seemingly avoida is what necessitates, and that's what the whole purpose of this world was, that we should have avoida. Because we say in davening, Zeh yoyim tchilas ma'asecha zikarin liyoyim rishon. Take it, divide into two parts. Zeh yoyim tchilas ma'asecha, because Rosh Hashanah, we know, is the yoyim shishi l'maaseh bereishis. Not the first day. The first day is Chof Hei Elul, and the Rebbe's actual date that he dated this Maamer was Chof Hei Elul Tavshin as a chana for Rosh Hashanah. Chof Hei Elul is really the first day of Ma'aseh Bereishis, but Chilas Masecha, when the Eibishter created Adam Arishin, but Osis Oretz Adam Aleh, that the Eibishter created Adam to actually work and do mitzvahs and work the land, means make the dira. That happened dafka on Yom Shishi L'Ma'aseh Bereishis. But yet we say Zikaron L'Yom Rishon. And what's this idea that it's only something that we remember? It's not the same as Yom Rishon, because we have to realize, and this is what the Torah wants us to know, is that there's a huge difference in the way the world was created, the Yom Rishon, and the way the world is created now. When the Eibishter created the world, he envisioned the Maaseh of Yidden, the Min Nimlach Mishmesein Shel Tzadikim. He envisioned the Geschmack that's going to happen through our Maaseh, but no one did any Maaseh. The world, the Eibishter was Mashpia, without Isarusa de Lasato, without any actual avoida. However, nowadays, after Brias Oilam, the way the Eibishter wants, the program of the world, is that he wants us to work. An adra. Why? Because when we do our avoida, we're actually able to bring into the world a gilui which is even higher than the Eibishter's megala by itself. In other words, there's the etzem of Hashem himself. That is never revealed. Because when we reveal ourselves to others, there's a certain part of us which we keep to ourselves, and we only share a certain external facade, even if it's a very high level with the world. To reach the essence of the Eibishter, that only comes through a child. When Tzemach Tzedek schlepped the Alter Rebbe, and he said, "Da is the Zayder," right? This is the connection. This is the Zayder. Through our avodah, because it's coming from Neshamas Yisrael, and our Neshamas are one with the Eibishter. So the etzem of a Yid is able to be mamshech the etzem of the Eibishter. That was unable to be accomplished just by Brias Ha'olam on its own, only through our avodah. It was only our avodah. In other words, our avodah is not just you're going to get the same thing you got until now. Just I want you to earn it. So therefore, I'm making work requirements. No, the work requirements, yes, it's beneficial that we should work, but the product that we're going to get, what's nimshach into the world, to our avodah, is actually greater because it's the etzem of the Eibishter, which cannot be nizgal in the world unless his etzem draws it down, which is the neshamas Yisrael. And even more, we know that there's a Gemara that says that, how do we know, according to the opinion, that the Geula is going to come in Tishrei? We know there's Machlokes, is if it's in Nisan, or if it's going to be in Tishrei, that we are going to have the Geula. So the opinion that holds that it's going to be in Tishrei, even though La'alocha it's going to be B'Nisan Nigalu, and there's the Sichas of Rebbe explaining the Tivuch between these two days. The Ikir is Moshiach should come at any time. The Raya is because it says in our pasuk that we're going to, times of Mashiach is going to be the sounding of the great shofar. And there's another pasuk that says, Tiku b'chayda shofar b'chesliyem chagenu. In other words, on Rosh Hashanah, there's a tzivui of blowing shofar. Rosh Hashanah, the shofar of Rosh Hashanah is obviously in Tishrei. So too, the shofar of Mashiach is going to be in Tishrei. That is the limud. Now, when there's a limud, it's not stam, we're taking random sukkim and we're putting it together. Say Shava, Vayomer, Dover. We just schlep things together. Every time there's sukkim which are attached by Chazal, it's because there's a certain essential connection that there is between these two inyanim. In other words, the Gemara is being megala to us. That means the Eibishter is Chochmah, is revealed to us that the shofar of Mashiach is connected to the shofar of Rosh Hashanah. If so, what's the whole uftu of the shofar of Rosh Hashanah? Is the fact that it comes to avodas ha'adam. That's the whole idea of the chiddush of Rosh Hashanah. Zayim tchilas masechas yikorim liyom rishon. And yet we're saying that there is an essential difference, that the shofar of Rosh Hashanah comes to avodas ha'adam. Yet the gilui of the shofar of Mashiach, Yitk'a, it's going to blow on its own without our avodah. Seemingly, if it's without our avodah, it means it's also lacking not just our deserving of the gilui, but the thing that's going to be mamshech the etzem, the avodas of neshamas Yisrael. So are we saying that this great? On one hand, we're saying that in the time of Mashiach, it's going to be the greatest gilui, even greater than the regular shofar, even greater than Matan Torah, even greater than the Mikdash and Yovel. It's the shofar Gdol. And yet it's coming without avodah. That avodah seemingly would be like Yom Rishon, which is lower than the avodah of Neshamas Yisrael. So how are these two things going to go together? Which really is a shaila about Mashiach. Is a Mashiach through our avodah, without our avodah? How are we supposed to understand how these things come together? And that Amir Hashem we're going to be explaining from Ois Heyanam in the coming share.